I'm telling you this because if it had happened anywhere else, maybe I'd have laughed it off, but this was my backyard, my fence, my porch light, and 4 uniforms with guns pointed at me and my friends before we could finish a beer. We were a half hour into a Sunday night that was supposed to be stupid and easy and quiet. And then Patricia Lang from the Homeowners Association decided to make herself the hero of the neighborhood. Why calling 911? My name's Daniel Rowe. I built the deck behind that house with my own hands. I keep my tools under the same tarp I've used for years. And that night, I was wearing a hoodie, putting a dent in a six-pack with Riley and Marcus, telling stories about the time a raccoon stole Marcus's sandwich. Patricia lives 2 houses down, trim hair, shoes that click on the sidewalk like punctuation, the kind of person who organizes neighborhood opinions the way some people organize spice racks. We'd had petty fights, wind chimes, a garden ornament that didn't fit the aesthetic, but we tried to be neighborly. She walked onto my property like she owned the line between lawns and freedom, pointed at our chairs, and said we couldn't be there after dark, then turned, pulled out her phone, and told someone on the line that these men look like trouble. We laughed at first, who takes a beer circle seriously? But then the sirens came. Headlights pounded on the fence, and 4 officers were in my yard before I could finish a sentence. 911 runs on what people report, and Patricia's phrasing was heavy enough that the response was immediate and armed. Sergeant Alvarez knew me from years ago, and his recognition is the reason the night didn't end in handcuffs. One name can change the room. When he said Daniel, the tension shifted. The officers lowered their hands, but the damage didn't disappear. Patricia posted a picture to the neighborhood group while the patrol lights were still spinning, and suddenly a simple backyard hangout was a headline in our own block. Reputations break faster than fences. A picture, a sentence, a rumor, and you're a character in someone else's version of events. Patricia had a knack for producing narratives. She painted us as loud, intimidating, dangerous. Our version was 3 beers and a dumb raccoon story. For a week we lived in that mismatch. Neighborly emails with worried punctuation, a petition about reconsidering gatherings, the kind of messages that make your mailbox feel like a judge's bench. The car in my driveway was suddenly unregistered in someone's post. Riley's old argument with a neighbor showed up as evidence without context. We tried to let the truth work, but truth moves slow and social media is impatient. Patricia shifted from implication to omission. Her posts left out key details and let readers fill in the gaps. So we pushed back the only way the system lets you. We documented things, we asked for footage, and we found allies. Marcus hired a lawyer named Claire who didn't waste words. She smelled like coffee and clear strategy. We recorded Patricia when she came to our gate and called us names, and neighbors who had been brushed off began to talk quietly to us about similar experiences. The arrival of the police felt cinematic even though none of us wanted a camera on the scene. Lights, the smell of exhaust, officers fanning out like they'd trained for something worse than a beer in a backyard. It's a memory you can't shake. Riley's hands went up because you raise your hands when authority tells you to. Marcus joked too loud about the raccoon, and his voice trembled. Sergeant Alvarez's face was a map of memory. He saw the kid who'd once shoveled his driveway, and that's why the moment uncoiled instead of snapping. Claire's legal moves were methodical, almost surgical. She asked for board minutes, complaint forms, and emails, small paper trails that look boring until you line them up. We found repeated phrases and suspicious timing. Complaints would appear the day after Patricia posted about neighborhood standards. The discovery didn't bring thunder, just the slow drip of proof that what felt like isolated incidents was organized exclusion. Then came the grocery store moment, the one everyone remembers because public places are theaters. I spotted Patricia near produce, a peach in her hand and a clipboard tucked under her arm. She saw me and didn't do the small, private thing. She did the public, performative thing. "You don't belong here," she said loud enough for the deli worker to look up. I could have kept walking. I didn't. "You think you get to decide who belongs?" I said, steady. She rolled her eyes and said, "This community has standards, like standards were a kind of verdict." She named a family who'd moved away, like quoting a precedent. I hit record on my phone. People stop in places like that. The air in a small store thickens into a hush that's part entertainment, part judgment. Claire filed for defamation, and Discovery pulled up a map of small cruelties. Emails coaching neighbors on wording. invoices charging extra for problem properties, even a voicemail from a board member suggesting certain homes be encouraged to move. It wasn't a single monstrous act. It was a pattern of coordinated exclusion dressed up as duty. One deposition stands out. Patricia sat upright and spoke about concern for safety, and the court reporter's pen clicked like a metronome. Claire's questions made the distance between concern and campaign visible. Words she'd used in casual posts echoed in formal complaint forms. When the timeline of posts matched the complaint log, something shifted in the room. You could see people connect the dots and realize this was not random. Discovery also brought forward quieter stories. The man who'd been fined for letting chickens out. The woman told her flag was not in character. The young family hit with late fees for leaving a bin out overnight. Each story was small, but together they formed a portrait of control. It wasn't violent, but it had intent. The intent to define who fits in and who doesn't. The courtroom isn't a film set. There were no dramatic shouting scenes, just careful unpeeling of records and the slow, legal unmasking of a pattern. When HOA minutes surfaced showing discussions about maintaining standards, neighbors who had nodded at Patricia's posts began to speak. People who had once preferred to look away started saying, "I saw this too." We got a settlement, money to repair the fence, a written apology, and an agreement to change how anonymous complaints were handled. Those are the practical things. They matter. But you can't hand someone back the evenings they felt watched, or the way Riley avoided the front porch for weeks because he imagined eyes on him every time he stepped outside. Legal victories stitch things up with a different thread than the one that was torn. The satisfying part, and satisfaction is a small, quiet thing, was watching credibility fray when pattern met proof. Patricia left the board. Some neighbors came by with awkward apologies, the kind that waver between regret and relief. Others dug in and tried a counter-petition for a minute, then faded. Power vacuums attract noise and opinions, and a place that had been sleepy suddenly had new lines drawn. Standing on the repaired deck with a beer in hand, I thought about what had actually been at stake. It wasn't a garden gnome or a porch beer. It was who gets to define a community. Power in small places looks like form letters and polite emails and the steady voice of one person who expects the room to listen. Those small mechanisms can be more damaging than anything obvious. So what did we learn? Document. Ask for the minutes. Press for the records. Sometimes you have to press record in a grocery store to turn a rumor into accountability. Sometimes a lawyer's questions uncover a pattern of polite cruelty. And sometimes the people who can change the rules are the people who pay attention. The neighbor who finally says, "I saw this too. I won't pretend we didn't fight dirt with dirt. It was messy, and maybe we escalated." But when one voice starts dictating who belongs, someone has to challenge it. That's the heart of it. Not revenge, not spectacle, but accountability and conversation. We rebuilt a fence, we changed a rule, and we learned that real repair is social work, awkward apologies, reopened connections, neighbors learning to listen again. Tell me what you think. Did we overstep? Was recording Patricia in the store crossing a line, or was it the only thing that made someone in power answer for their words? Do HOAs have too much power, or are they just trying to keep order? Drop a comment with your take, share this with someone who lives in a tight community, and subscribe if you want more stories about the weird, messy, and very human side of neighborhood life. Who was right? Who was wrong? I want to hear your take.